When was a "F it, I'll do it myself" moment for you? At the start of the pandemic, I had a cyst growing in my hand. It was so painful I couldn't lower my hand below my chest or it would be agony. However, because I'm extremely vulnerable, I wasn't able to go to the hospital as the local was on lockdown and completely overflowing with COVID cases. I was just given antibiotics that did nothing. So one night I'd finally had enough. I'd already had 6 removed in the last year, so I knew what the deal was. I woke up at 2 a.m. in unspeakable pain, said F it, and dug the thing out myself with some sterilized tweezers, a surgical knife, and a crap load of kitchen towels to mop up the blood. I did it while watching WrestleMania because it was the only thing on at 2 a.m. The next day I called my doctor because I now had a perfectly circular hole in my hand, but it wasn't deep enough for stitches. Just advised I patch myself up with some plasters, and he sent some more specific antibiotics to my house. He mentioned that cut looked pretty well done and that the cyst was entirely removed, so I thought that was pretty cool. 3 out of 10, just for being able to say I operated on myself and didn't cause any further complications. And hey, you probably saved a whole lot of money too. I mean, there's no doubt that medical bills are just unreasonably large for stupid reasons. 8 years old, was begging my parents to teach me to ride a bike for well over a year, maybe even 2. I felt like the last of my friends to learn, and it was embarrassing. I finally went into my dad's toolbox, that probably weighed as much as I did, and tried about a dozen tools until I managed to figure out how to take off my little pink training wheels. I spent the next couple weeks non-stop teaching myself how to ride a bike with zero help. Absolutely screwed myself up numerous times. No one noticed or cared, except for my friends who were stoked when I finally rolled up on 2 wheels. I'm 30 now, and I weirdly find this to be a pivotal moment of my life. It seems insignificant, but to feel the power of self-sufficiency at 8 was pretty dope, and really built my confidence. Yeah, I know people who like to use the excuse of like, oh, I'm never gonna ride a bike because my parents wouldn't let me ride when I was little. And I'm just like, okay, and well, you are an adult now, you know that, right? You can just go start things on your own. If you really want to do something, then just find a way to do it. You don't need excuses. The part-timer mopped the freezer with water. Well, hey, now you just gotta go get a Zamboni because you got an ice skating rink. Literally any group project in school. See, I always remember when there was a group project kind of thing that I would almost always find a way to just be my own personal group. Like, it's probably better to just be on your own and have nobody else there to distract you or take any of the credit than it is to have some worthless teammate. I bought a house recently, and the previous owners didn't leave the mailbox key. I had a million other things to do, so I figured I'd call the locksmith and let them deal with it. After getting jerked around by 3 different guys who refused to even give me a ballpark on cost, I said screw it and drilled into the lock myself and replaced it. I got the job done for about $30 instead of probably $200. Yeah, not all things are as complicated as we give professionals credit for. I get that some things you definitely want to hire somebody for if it's like a really dangerous job, but sometimes you just gotta go take a hammer to it. I had a group project in college where my group completely flaked. Skipped meetings, missed deadlines, never delivered. The day we were meeting to combine all our parts into a single report, no one showed. Didn't even email their parts. Turns out they all planned on writing their parts that day, the day before it's due. They had nothing, and now weren't even going to try. So, F it, did it all myself, took all their names off it, added our email chain as an appendix. It wasn't until I was presenting it in front of the class solo that they realized what happened. I mean, as long as the teacher was cool with it, and they were like, alright, we'll give you all the credit, and not to anyone else, then I say, justice was served. Every time I asked my ex to do something while I was at work, like the dishes or taking out the garbage, I'd still have to do them when I got home after 12 hours. It's always funny when people talk about their ex doing something crappy. It just kind of tells a whole story behind the scenes. I was working tech support for a company, making $12 an hour, doing internal pre-alpha testing on a new product. I figured out the root cause for the biggest problem keeping the product from working properly, which at the time was threatening the launch of the product. I told the engineer responsible. He ignored me. Later, at an all-hands meeting when the problem was being discussed, I brought up my findings again in the presence of all involved, including management. The engineer said, "Go get an engineering degree and then tell me how to do my job." Coincidentally, that day happened to be the last day of open enrollment for the next semester at my local university. I quit my job, took out the student loans, and went to school full-time from there. Now I've got an electrical engineering degree, and a 6-figure salary doing factory automation with companies like Tesla on my resume. I never did take the time to go back and tell that guy how to do his job. You know, it's kind of ironic that people that see themselves as much smarter than they are end up making the stupidest mistakes. Cutting my own hair during peak COVID. I picked an easy cut and it came out pretty good. See, I remember during COVID when everyone was like, I can't go get a haircut. And for me, I'm just like, I only go to get it trimmed like maybe once every year or two, so I didn't even notice that the places were closed. I had an appointment at the dentist to have a rotten tooth removed. I turned up, talked to the dentist, she numbed me up with a local anesthetic, and set to with her pliers. She yanked, and pulled, and yanked some more. Nothing happened. It's worth mentioning that she was very small, maybe 5'1". She said she would see if she could find a stronger colleague. No problem, I said. Let me have a go. Okay. So she put the pliers back on my tooth, and I mumbled and drooled. Are you absolutely sure it's the right one? Yes, she said. So I carefully took hold of the pliers as she released her grip on them. She had another peek in my mouth to ensure they were gripping the correct tooth, and nodded. I pulled like heck, and the tooth came out. She even gave me a 10% discount off my bill. Well, hey, if anything, you guys didn't do any of the work at all. I should just get it for free. I'm not super crazy, but at 25 years old, I had been saving for a car for years. I was living with my folks, and my dad told me that if I save up $2,000, he would help me get a car. I saved it easily, but every time I asked to go look for a car, Dad would tell me I needed to prove I could hang on to that money. Which of course I couldn't because he was having me pay my medical bills and med costs. Around that time, my younger brother graduated from high school. My dad and uncles banded together, bought and gave him no strings attached an old crappy van. I was livid. So I dragged my dad down to the dealership and bought my first car. Took out a loan and everything. My dad had always tried to stunt me growing up, but I was over being a kid. I was 25 for crying out loud. He was pissed because he didn't want me to be in debt, but nuts to that. Now I'm 31, on my second car that I bought brand new, and have great credit, all because my brother got a free car and I wanted to spite my dad. See, some people use crappy parents as an excuse to never do anything in life. Others use it as a chip on their shoulder to prove them wrong. That's how I started making computer game mods. I started playing Witcher 3 4 years after it was released. Some spoilers below. When I finished the main storyline, I was disappointed that the political charges Geralt helped to implement were in no way visible. I just killed a lot of people to put Dijkstra on the throne. And yet, every time I walked through the Novigrad Square, I still have to listen to the Witcher hunters shouting about burning mages? It's been 4 years, I thought. Surely someone has already made this very essential mod. Well, apparently not. I've never made a single mod before in my life, but since playing without it was just unimaginable, I searched for some tutorials and started working on it. I even made complementary mods for other endings after I published the first one, and people were interested. See, I've never played Witcher, but I do find this story pretty interesting, because this is very similar to my situation with the YouTube word list, because I was looking all over YouTube, like, there's gotta be just like a list of words somewhere that you can tell exactly what not to put in your titles, so you can avoid being demonetized. But all of the lists I could find were like very incomplete, just not very well put together, and so I was like, alright, that's it, I'm just gonna do this myself. I'm just gonna go, like, add every word in the dictionary and just test each one at a time. And sort of surprisingly, but not surprisingly, a lot of people around YouTube were pretty into it. It's gonna be small, and I don't know if it fits, but the teacher had hot chocolate for the students, which she would tell people that she lets everyone have some. Bad thing is that in reality, she only actually let her favorite students have any, and would actively say no to a select few kids it was clear she didn't like. I was one of those favorites, but would actively choose not to have any. One day a kid asked if they could have some, and she decided to yell at the kid, "Bring some yourself." So I, like the smart aleck I am, decided, if she won't share, then I will. And the next day I brought some pouches of hot cocoa and shared with the kids I knew she didn't like. Hot cocoa was not given to anyone after this event. Geez, what a crummy teacher. I don't think you're supposed to be spiteful to half the kids in your class. The sewer line under our house was failing because it had deteriorated. We had 3 estimates. $27.50 to put a liner in part of it, $32.50 to put a liner in most of it, and $8,000 to dig it out, and replace the run with PVC. My buddy told me I could do it myself for under $1,000. He lent me his electric jackhammer and a saw that I could use to cut the concrete. I started at 4 o'clock on a Friday right around this time last year. I set up a canopy behind the back door where I was dumping all the concrete and dirt that I dug out. It had snowed 2 days earlier, so there was about 6 inches of snow on the ground still. I dug out the entire pipe, including a run to an old toilet drain that shot off to the side and went up the wall. I was finally at the point on Sunday at noon where I put an angle grinder to the pipe and started cutting. The point of no return. I removed the horizontal and vertical lines in a short order. I measured and cut the new PVC, dry fit it all and checked levels, started gluing around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, had everything tied back together by sunset. Went to work the next day, got off work and went back to refilling the trench, wrapped up by Wednesday, except for resetting the state, which I had to wait on due to a back order. Saved $8,000. The kicker was that there was a massive stone set right against the pipe where the drain crew said the deterioration was. Turns out that the stone had somehow deformed the pipe. No damage, just an oval instead of a circle, and, well, crap would clog up right there. If we had had a liner put in, the problem would have actually ended up worse than before. All told, I put in $800 in supplies and materials. I gave my buddy $100 for the encouragement and letting me use his tools. So I put 5-ish days to save my $7,100 and ended up with a better fix than I would have had. Yeah, whenever it comes to like any home improvement or yard work, if you can take care of it yourself, it's almost always worth it, because people who are professionals doing that kind of stuff, like you're paying them a whole bunch just to show up and try and figure out what the problem is. I've also noticed that if you are working on something on your own house, you kind of lose track of time. You could put in like 20 or 30 hours and not even notice it. But if somebody else is working on your house for all that time, then they expect a lot more payment for that. When I was a little kid, I was told that I wouldn't make the high school varsity team. I did. Then I was told that my baseball life would end there. It didn't. Then, as a freshman in college, I was told that this was the end of my baseball line. It wasn't. I know some people get discouraged by negativity, but sometimes it builds such a big chip on your shoulder that you have no other option but to carry the burden, and wear it like a badge of honor. Okay, so it never really implied that his career was over, so is this guy just an MLB professional posting on Reddit? A friend and I went to a concert at the old Gillette Stadium. It was chaos getting out of there. We moved maybe 50 feet in over an hour. So I got out of the car and had a look around. There was some temporary fencing, and we figured if we rammed it with the car, it would open up another conduit to get to the exit quickly. At the time, I was driving this crappy old Ford and didn't really care what happened to it. So I got back into the car, said to my friend, "Are you ready?" And we drove straight into the fence. It came down easily, and we started our own path to the exit, and we're on the highway in 10 minutes. There was literally a path of cars behind me once I took the fence out. We got back to my friend's house, went to sleep, and I inspected the car when I got up the next day. The only damages to the car were 2 small scratches in the front bumper, which were just in addition to the numerous other scratches already there. 10 out of 10 would ram a fence with my car again. I've been in a similar situation, being kind of trapped in a weirdly shaped parking lot when there's snowbanks all around it. And the driver of the car just decided, I'm just going to drive over the snowbank. I mean, that's probably one of the most scared I've been in a car, but his Land Cruiser handled it just fine. I tried to start many bands to play the music I've written, but there's so much weird ego crap when playing music with people you aren't close to. So I gave up and reinvested in bedroom music production. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, "Oh, you play so many instruments, you should join a band." And I'm just like, being in a band just has way too many downsides. I do not want to deal with all the people. Like, you gotta put so much time and money and coordination with other people who have to be just as dedicated and go through so much crap to basically get nothing in return. So yeah, just like this guy, I'll just stick to making bedroom music. But that about does it for all of these F it, I'll do it myself kind of stories. I mean, I feel like I can relate to a lot of stuff like this, because once you realize that you can't rely on most people for anything, you start to realize, like, okay, if you are in control and you just do it yourself, then you're not going to have so many people dragging you down. I mean, even so far as just like, oh man, how can my friends never like get anything together or like plan anything fun to do? So usually I'm the one that's just like, all right, here's what I want to do. All of you guys, we all got to come together. But that's just my 2 cents, so I'll see you next time.